Hi everyone, this is Matt Lawton and this is the Astrological Winds channel, and we are going to look at the astrological weather forecasts for this week, the week of May 21st through the 30th, or May 25th, May 25th through the 31st. Get that right. There's not a lot of big activity this week. In fact, from one perspective, there's really only one bigger thing, and that is Mercury is going to go into Cancer. And that's it's big mainly because Mercury is going to spend actually not 2 or 3 weeks in Cancer like it normally does for most signs. It's actually going to end up spending about 9 weeks in Cancer all the way until August 4th. And the reason being, of course, is that it will be going retrograde in Cancer in a couple weeks. So it's already slowing down. And, in the sky, I don't know if you noticed, I had said in the monthly for May to watch Venus this month, and by the end of the month, or not quite the end of the month, it was actually these last few days, it conjuncted Mercury, and the two of them were together on the horizon. So it's been really interesting. They've been like two vehicles moving in opposite directions on a road. And Venus heading backwards, retrograde, and Mercury going forward. So Mercury has been going up in the sky. Venus has been going down. It's very interesting. Venus was really high in the sky for a long time. And now that it's been retrograde, has headed for the sun and the horizon and will be disappearing, going into the underworld. Venus going into the underworld for a number of weeks now. So that's always been considered by the ancient astrologers. When Venus went into the underworld, she was abducted by Pluto or Hades, and that's when the energy of Venus became barren. So combine that with our Venus retrograde and stuff, and like I said, relationships, finances, art, things that Venus rules are all kind of in a state of what would be stress or barren energy. So Mercury at this point is going to go into Cancer, has moved past Venus, but in the middle of June, it's also going to go retrograde. So we're going to have 2 of the 3 inner planets retrograde at the same time for the last half of June. So it's going to be a very, very struggling time for a lot of the things that we normally expect to go certain ways are not going to be doing that. So that's going to get intense. So it is a very big event kind of with Mercury going into Cancer this week, because it is going to spend this 9 weeks there. It is going to spend its retrograde there. And as I said earlier this year, when Mercury went retrograde in Pisces, this year is the retrogrades of Mercury are going to be in the water signs, and Mercury is not comfortable in the water signs. So let's talk about that with Cancer. So when Mercury goes into Cancer, what happens is the intellect, our mind, which needs to remain objective as much as possible, gets very subjective, because our emotions start to really color our thoughts. So basically, our emotions are what's triggering a lot of the thoughts we're having now. So very subjective thoughts, therefore, because they're coming from a personal, emotional space. And because of that, it can be difficult at times to connect with people. We have a tendency to kind of fall into past patterns with Cancer, patterns that we inherited from our heritage, our family, our society, the way things have been. So So there's this like energy of like of feeding like the past, and the and emotions are ingrained and into our past events. That's, you know, how we remember things, is how emotionally charged that event is. The more likely you'll remember it the rest of your life, or for many, many years, and not only remember it, but remember it very acutely because of the emotional impact it had. So those thoughts, our thoughts now are being very much influenced, or they will be very much influenced by that Cancer energy. And that can make for difficult communications at times. And especially when Mercury goes retrograde, especially with Venus retrograde, it's going to feed a lot of issues. And in particular, once again, like as I've said before, the Venus retrograde is always going to feed negative relationships that already are having issues. And so so Mercury in Cancer is going to bring in family and family issues and things from the past that can be very, very difficult, and struggle with that. So that's really the only real big event. Now that being said, this has been an odd week because when you think about aspects, we have the conjunction, we have the opposition, we have the square, we have the trine, and the sextile. And those are our main 5 aspects. And those are the most powerful aspects as far as when the planets get into one of those relationships with one another. But there's a set of 3 minor aspects that also have a relatively strong effect on us when 2 planets are in these relationships with one another. So this week is really interesting because the Sun, Mercury, and Mars, all 3 of those planets are going to end up having one of the 3 minor aspects to the Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn lineup in late Capricorn, early Aquarius. So Mercury is going to be quincunxing those 3 planets this week. The Sun is going to be sesquiquadrating those 3 planets this week. And Mars is going to be semi-squaring those 3 planets this week. And like, Matt, like whoa, like that's a lot of information to download. What are you talking about? Sesquiquadrate, quincunx, semi-square, maybe some newer terms for some of you guys. So like basically these 3 aspects are not as strong as the 5 main ones that you've probably heard about, but they do have like minor effects that can be felt. So the quincunx is the one that I think of those 3 that you feel the most, because when there's a quincunx, it means the 2 planets have nothing in common whatsoever. So it's very, very difficult for them to see anything in a harmonious way. They don't have the same element, they don't have the same mode, they don't have the same polarity. So there's nothing in common with them. So Mercury is quincunxing Pluto today, and then Jupiter Wednesday, and Saturn, I think, on Friday. And like, so that's very bumpy or awkward energy, the quincunx, because the planets just are not working well together because the signs they're in just absolutely have nothing in common. So they kind of work in a like behind the scenes weird kind of way that can start to bring up like suspicions and second thoughts in people, like with each other, because it just doesn't feel like the energy is right. And Mercury Pluto can actually bring like covert or secretive maneuvers where you actually feel like you have to operate on that level. And then Mercury Jupiter can bring very hypocritical behavior where people, don't realize their self-righteousness is like literally their actions are like literally like against what they're saying. So it can really bring up hypocritical energy. And then Mercury with Saturn quincunx can bring up a lot of fears, like inner fears seem to rise to the surface and really inhibit our decision making processes. So they can see all those energies are really awkward. Then you go to the Ceci quadrate. You're like, Ceci quadrate, what's that, man? Well, the Ceci quadrate is actually a square with a semi-square. And that's how you have to deal with it. It's one of the most it's probably the most frustrating aspect because you're stuck, actually. There's really not anything you can do to make anything move forward. So you actually, the only thing you can do with the Ceci quadrate usually is to sit out and wait and just let the situation develop so that it will eventually turn into a trine, those two aspects, as they move from a Ceci quadrate. The next aspect that the planets will make will be a trine. So basically you just have to wait a little while for the energy to break with the Ceci quadrate, which is difficult. It's a difficult thing to wait, especially for Western world people, because we've been trained to, be so go for what we want, and just make things happen. So like Ceci quadrate's like, no, if you try to make things happen, I can guarantee you it's going to be some very awkward kind of result again. So that's that same awkward off energy kind of going on. And so when the sun is hitting Pluto and Jupiter and Saturn in a Ceci quadrate, it's really blocking a lot of the life path stuff we want to do. Like a lot of the things we want to do, the sun on our journey this week are going to be frustrated. And with Saturn, with Pluto, it's likely to get us angry at who we perceive or what we perceive to be blocking us, and possibly get us in some power struggles. With Jupiter, once again, we have to be really careful about getting up on the soapbox and becoming the preacher and thinking we're the ones who are right, getting an arrogant and self-righteous tone about things, because that's just going to block. People are just going to turn away from that. You're going to be blocked again. And Sun, Ceci quadrate with Saturn, is just once again just the restrictions of reality of what's going on right now. And I think it's interesting to have these three minor aspects like this that are these awkward aspects all peaking together this week with these three personal planets, because we are in the middle of a time where there is a lot of confusion right now and people don't know what to do, and it does feel very awkward. You have many people wanting to go one way, a lot of people going the other way in relation to the coronavirus. So once again, these major world events really can show us how these energies manifest in the planets and the aspects going on. So Mars is the last of the three inner planets having an awkward or bumpy kind of relationship with Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn this week. And it has the semi-square, which is the third of those three. The semi-square is basically a half a square. So it's frustration. It's basically, once again, having to wait. It's kind of feeling kind of powerless in a situation because it hasn't developed enough for you to be able to do something about it. So, Mars is the planet of action and it wants to take action. So when it runs into Pluto, same thing, as like the Sun Pluto, it's like, there's a lot of angry energy. And then for people with a lower consciousness, when Mars gets together with Pluto, they can actually act that stuff out, in violent kind of ways. So really a good time to avoid people and places where that kind of situation is ripe to actually happen. And then Mars with Jupiter is a energy booster. It can really jack up our energy, but once again it feels like it's really angry energy because it feels like it can't really do what it wants to do. And then Mars Saturn is completely, once again, being stuck in a place, feeling angry inside about being stuck. So all three of these inner planets hitting these three outer planets with these minor aspects that are not so minor are all going to make this week a very odd week. You're gonna feel like you're kind of like, in like the haunted house or something. It's gonna definitely just feel really weird. It's gonna be hard to get the energy flowing the way you want. It's going to be hard to get energy flowing with people too. Now, it's like, Matt, help! Like you're not really giving us a lot of like positive news this week. Now, there are two things that are pretty positive, and one of them is the asteroid, one of those four main asteroids that represent the four main subdivisions of the female archetype. This one being Juno, which is the wife or partner, is going direct this week. So I think at least the energy between partners that might have been stuck or frozen for the last couple months or so is going to start to move forward. And then today, actually, Monday, the 25th, is a very dynamic day. Mars is in a sextile with Uranus today, and the moon is triggering both of them too. So opportunities to do something different, original, and exciting should come to you. And so it's really dynamic energy. Like it can really like fire you up and get you really interested in something today. And it's Mars transit, so it's been in effect already for it, on Sunday, and it will bleed over into Tuesday too. So like these 3 days are just a time when there's a good chance to just get into something new that's really exciting and stimulating and different, different than your normal routine, and just something that really fires you up. So like, if you see some opportunity come that way early this week, it's definitely something that, is good to jump on. All right, so that's the weather report for this week. I know it's not a lot of stuff. The Mercury in Cancer is something we're going to be dealing with until early August. And like I said, Mercury's just not comfortable in water signs. So that's going to be a little bit of a struggle, which is going to peak those last 2 weeks of June while Venus is retrograde too, and Mercury will be retrograde too. But yeah, that's a lot of bumpy, awkward energy this week. So, if it feels like that's what's going on, it's what's going on. And just remember, it's just a week. And, the energy is going to pass, and we'll move on to something else. All right, next week, we not only will have a weekly, we're going to have the monthly for June, which, like I said, the second half of June, we are going to have Venus retrograde all through June. The second half of June, Mercury's going to be retrograde too. So we're going to really be at an apex of retrograde energy in June, which really means we need to all temper our expectations of moving forward in June. All right, this is Matt Lawton, and this is the Astrological Winds channel. I am available for all kinds of readings. If your soul is feeling some kind of itch that you need help with, I'm here for you. My email is matthuE823@gmail.com. And talk about costs and stuff. And I do all kinds of other readings too. Elections, horary, fixed stars, predictive, whatever you may need. Natal, relationship, child. So if you need any help with that stuff, need some awareness and guidance as to what the energies in play is going on so that you can make a better decision for yourself, don't hesitate and get in touch with me. We can work something out. All right, until next week, stay safe, stay healthy, and namaste.